Okay, so let's look at this. We're going to go back to our mixer brush. Now we're going to use a preset here. And I'm also going to grab the hard round brush. And I'm going to go to dry heavy load. And what I'm going to do, now here's one place where you're going to want to go not have sample all layers on. The reason being is we're going to sample this image, and if you go sample all layers, it's going to pick up the white of the board. Does that make sense? Which I don't want it to do. I'm going to go Alt. Hang on. There it is. Okay, so I had to take it off. It was on load solid colors only. I don't want it to load solid colors only now. Does that make sense? And we have it on dry heavy load, which is just a preset. So all these are already preset, okay? And you can see in the window, it sampled it. Do you see it? Okay. On my mixer brush. And you can see what it does. It saves, it samples all that light information. Does that make sense? So if I went up here, what you're really getting is that, except that, you know, it's pushed together. Does that make sense? So if I go here, push them all back together, I get that, okay? Or I could go here, find one that's not assigned to anything, like maybe one of these. So if I assign another brush to it, it's still going to hold on to that color information. Does that make sense? Okay? Which, it could be really cool, like if you use, I'm trying to find one that's a good sort of round, weird brush. So let's go. Okay, so this, I basically made this, I think I started with one of these, I think. And then I made a stamp brush. Okay? Does that make sense? And then I came in and I tweaked the whole thing. And I just added stuff. And then I made another brush down here. Well, let's get this color. I don't want to do that. Let's go brush. Then I'm going to go. So what I did is I sampled one leaf. I'm going to change up the direction. I'm going to go to scattering. More like that. And I could get this to dance over it and it'll make sense in a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's go back to here, make sure, okay, we're empty. I'm going to go back to, so normally what I have here, and I'm going to see if I can do it real quick. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go to this one right here. And I'm going to go to here. I'm going to try and just make a quick stamp brush. I've already made one, but it looks like I'm going to have to, or actually I could do, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to go edit, define brush preset, bush, hit OK, just so I have that outline. And I'm going to go back to my mixer brush. Let's see if I can grab this one. And I'm going to go Alt. And you can see it picked up that little bush. Does that make sense? So we're going to come in here. So what it's going to do is, and I had to hit a couple times, which normally I don't have to, but that's all right. And it's going to make that bush idea. Does that make sense? Now, I can come in here, go back to this and go, let's do this. Let's make it a bigger bush. Now the problem here is it'll start to repeat, and you can see it repeating, correct? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to make this a little smaller, grab some of that dark area, go back, and I can kind of shape it a little bit so it doesn't feel too uniform. Does that make sense? So let's just put that in there, so that's not too bad. And I'm going to make this whole thing a little bigger, just so I have some breathing room. And then I'm going to go, let's do this. Let's go new layer. I'm going to put it behind this. I'm going to get my marquee tool. Get color. Again, I can just readjust the color, so I'm not worried about what color I pick. And I'm going to go, oops. Make sure that you go to foreground to transparent. Bring it up. I'm going to adjust this so it's not so screaming. I'm going to go up here, make another layer, get a swatch. I'm going to get, let's just try that and see if it works. Maybe get a little bit of a sunsetty thing going. And then I'm going to just make a shape here that I'm just going to alter. So I'm going to say this bush is sitting on a bank in water. Does that make sense? And we have to make another layer. So let's go shore. And then before I do anything to it, I'm going to take this. I'm going to go Control T, hit my shift, change this up a little bit. We can put that over on the far side. And then I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to go to my hue saturation. Make it a little lighter, maybe a little bluer, maybe just a hair, and lighter so it sits back there more. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So let's take this shore thing, and what you should do to do this, I'm going to do it real quick with my smudge brush. Make a mixer brush that's just a smudge brush for this. Does that make sense? And get a rough one. I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to come in here, and then I'm going to put this on, sample all layers, so it should pick up some of this blue. And we're going to say this is the shoreline here. Mess that up a little bit. And I'll come in here and I'll finesse this a little bit more in a minute. And then I'm going to take this, just like we did with the camera. I'm going to go edit, or no, I'm going to go this. Make a copy, edit, transform, flip vertical. It would be about there. I'm going to put it behind my shore. And then I'm going to go, just like we did with the camera, make a layer mask. Here, make sure this is black and white. And we start to get a little reflection into the water. Does that make sense? Now, here's another really simple thing to do. If I want to create a backdrop, I'm just going to reuse all my assets. If you hold shift, you can adjust it. I'm going to say that's the shore, or that's the whatever the. So I'm going to take this again. Well, now I'm going to take an eraser, I think, and shape this. Now, I should get a rough eraser, but I can roughen it up later. And let's say this is a mountain. Let's put it all the way back. Now I'm going to change the color. Try and get a cooler. And lighter. Yeah, more like that. Now I'm going to come in here again with my eraser a little bigger. And I'm going to shift click and hold it. Just like that. Now another thing I can do is I can grab some of this color. I'll grab a regular brush for this. Too bright. Now, I'm going to try this because I'm going to smudge it. Or what I really want you to do is mixer brush it. It's not quite right. I want to make sure this is sample all layers. It's too bright. So I'm going to grab some of this. Try this. I just want to get some warmth into that. Back here into this. And again, just make a mixer brush instead of using your smudge. It'll actually work better. I just want that, whatever you call it, that mountain to pick up a little bit of warmth. Now, another thing I can do here, now here's something else to look at, you guys. Hang on. When you go into hue saturation, why is that doing that? There it is. Doesn't want to exit this tool for some reason. There it goes. When you go to hue saturation, there's also a breakdown of color right here under master. Okay, so when I go here and I go desaturate, it's just going to desaturate the whole thing, which in this case looks fine. But I could go concentrate on just the yellows and just pull out some of the yellow so I don't lose all the warmth. Or I could go to any of these breakdowns, magenta, blue, cyan, green, yellow, and it'll just affect that temperature. Does that make sense? So in this case, I'm just going to leave it like that. Probably would go a little more blue again. But I'm going to leave it there. That's fine. And then probably put it over here. Oops. Let me get it over there like that. I would probably come in here and darken this. This shore would need to get a little bit of, oops, a little bit of the green in it. And also some of this dark where it meets the water. Oops, not dark enough. And everything I'm throwing down, I'm going to manipulate with my smudge brush, or my mixer brush. Now, a lot of times when it starts to go into the water here, that brownish color will go into the water. When it's still shallow, you'll see it under the water. Now, I can also go back. Let's go back to here. I'm going to try going back here and getting some of this brighter stuff. I don't need this anymore. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to grab that leaf brush. Let's get this color first. I'm going to grab this leaf brush by itself, this leaf alone. And I'm going to have to rescatter it again because I didn't save it. Brush tip, let's go to spacing, space it out. Scattering like that. Transfer, and let's try that. And then I'm going to go to a really bright. Oops. This one I want a regular brush. I'm going to grab this green. I'm going to push it really hot. Let's try that. Little too hot, but you get the point. And then on this part, I would have it just catch in a little bit of that, scatter those leaves around. Does that make sense? And I'd also do it, grab some of these and have them break the edges here. That way I can really break it up, especially if I have if I use this asset again, I'm going to want to, like if I had another bush behind this one, it's the same one. In order to break up the shape, I got to reshape it a little bit so they don't look like they're, I literally cloned them, right? I can put a little of that in there. And I'd have to scatter them out. Looks like I need to scatter them out a little more, so let's go over here. Let's go count. That's too many. Scatter them out more. Yeah, that's better. Then if I grab this, and I can just start to make a little scene here. Another thing I would probably do is grab a regular brush. Start adding some of that in. I'd also, here, I'd probably grab some of this lighter value because this is going to come up right against that and it's going to lap against it, and I could have this come out and I could start to create some reflections over that reflection. Does that make sense? Yes? This back here would reflect this bush. Flip vertical, make sure it's behind it, layer mask, And I can start to build a little scene like this. Does that make sense? So this is what I was talking about on Monday. How this feels like a whole different tool than the one we talked about on Monday. The one we talked about on Monday was really just a painting tool straight up. This one's now a cloning tool, but it's sort of like the clone stamp on steroids. You can just do so much with it.